In this video, we are going to be talking about forms. Now, forms are an incredibly important part of the web. It's how we submit data to a server. Now, we don't have a server running, so we can't actually submit data, but we can learn all about how it actually works so that when you do get into a server-side language, maybe it's Python, PHP, Ruby, Java, C, it doesn't really matter as long as it can run on the server, you're going to need to know how these work. Now, forms work strictly with HTML. You have to write some HTML to submit a form. And there's quite a bit behind a form as well. So it's not just as simple as writing a form and then just saying, okay, well, all the data is going to go to the server. It's not quite that simple. We have to get into like request methods and different form submission types. So we're going to talk all about that. And we're also going to introduce a bunch of new HTML elements. Input, select, text area, button. We're going to talk all about these in the coming videos. So for this one, we're going to get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and then we're actually going to backtrack and learn about some of the specific elements that we see in here. But in this video, we're going to learn specifically about forms and how they work. All right, so I just have VS Code open here, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it forms.html. Let's go ahead and create an HTML5 page structure. Call it forms, and in our body we have, hello, this is a form page. So now I open up my browser and I go open file. You actually can't see that was cut off by my screen, but I went to file, open, command O, control O, open forms.html, and we can see that this is a boring page. This does nothing. So now let's learn about the form itself. So we have a form element because in HTML, things are pretty verbosely named. They're very accurately named. So when you write a form, it's actually just called a form. That's really nice. We have a method in here. So we can see that we've got two methods, get and post. We're going to leave that blank for now. And an action, which is where exactly are we sending this form to? Is it going to be this page? Is it going to be another page? We're going to leave that blank for now as well. Now in here, we can have different elements. So we can have an input with a text type, we can have a text area, and we're just going to leave these as blank. And I'm just going to skip over these real fast, but we're going to learn about these in the next couple of videos. We have a button. Yeah, this one actually needs some text. Let's put button in here. And we have a select, which also comes with child elements called options. So we've got an option in here, 1 and 2. So this is generally what a form sort of looks like, and the button's usually at the bottom. So let's refresh our page and take a quick boo at what this looks like. We have text area, so we can now write in here. Again, we'll talk about this more specifically a little bit later. We have a larger text area where we can do multiple lines. And we also have a dropdown, so we can select 1, 2, and then we've got a button. Again, we're going to talk about these in future videos, so hold your hat on that one because we're going to learn about these individually. Now, the idea behind a form is whenever you type something in here, maybe you're saying your name. So my name is going to be Caleb, and you submit your form. It should say, hi, Caleb, welcome, Caleb. Or maybe you're signing up for a service like, I don't know, Facebook. Everyone has Facebook. So you go to facebook.com, and we have two forms in here. We have an email and we have a password. So let's just quickly inspect this element. We're going to see, yep, input type is equal to password. And then we have a sign up form. So we've got a first name, a last name, your phone number, a password, your birthday. So you got your month, day, and year, your gender, and then just a sign up button. So it looks a little nicer than what I've written, but basically it works the exact same way as what I'm about to teach you. Okay, so let's head on back and let's actually learn about this form here. So we have two method types in here. So let's go ahead and get rid of some of these. Button. We're going to do just an input type, or an input element. So the type is going to be submit, and the value is going to be, again, we'll learn about this in a future lesson. The value is going to be submit. And in here, the type is going to be text, and the name of this is going to be, let's do first underscore name. Yeah, let's just do first name. And let's see what this page looks like. Okay, so we've got a blank field and we have a submit button. So there's still no context around it, but that's okay. The first method we're going to talk about is get. So get is how we can, it's one way of how we can send data to a server. However, the trick with get is if I save this and refresh my page and I just put my name in here, watch my URL bar. It now says $first name is equal to Caleb. Now that's pretty cool because a server can actually go and say, oh, okay, there's a variable called first name and its value is Caleb. Neat. We can't actually grab this with HTML just because HTML is not a proper programming language. It's a markup language. But if you're running Python or PHP or Java or C or really anything else, you'll be able to get a variable called first name is equal to Caleb. And if I create another one in here, and let's call this one last name, refresh my page, this one's going to be Caleb Tallinn, and I'm going to submit. And we can see it in the URL here. It says first name is equal to Caleb and last name is equal to Tallinn. So now the server is going to have two variables, one called first name, one called last name. Now that's the get method. And the get method will always take whatever the name of the input is or whatever form element you're working with. Maybe it's a text area, maybe it's a select. We'll get into those a little bit later. But it's going to take that name attribute, first name and last name. And because we're using the get method, it's going to show up in our URL like this. So if you were to ask for someone's password, let's do this. Let's put password and let's call this one password. Watch this. I'm just going to refresh this page and I have LastPass installed here. So it's making my form a little ugly here, but I'm gonna put Caleb Tallinn and my password is going to be something secret. Watch my URL bar as soon as I hit submit. First name is Caleb, last name is Tallinn, and wait for it, password is something secret. So you can actually see my password. So it's super, super insecure. It's the most insecure way of sending data. And there are reasons for using a GET request, but for now, just know that GET request is insecure. It is a bad way to send secret data. So don't put passwords. Don't put credit card numbers. Don't put anything like that in there because it's in your URL bar. If it's in your URL bar, Chrome is now able to get it and send it to Google. It's stored in your history, so anyone who comes on your computer is going to be able to see it. If you copy and paste a link to a friend, guess what? They now have your password, and so does whatever service that you're using. So maybe you pasted it on WhatsApp. Well, Facebook, the owner of WhatsApp, now has your password in plain text, and that is a big no-no. So there's a way we can hide this. We can hide this with a method called post. And so if I save this, let's go in here and get rid of this stuff. So I have my first name and last name. I removed the password field and we're going to say Caleb Tallinn. And when I submit, nothing is going to happen in my URL. It looks like nothing happened, but when I hit Command R or Control R or just refresh the page, watch this. Absolutely nothing happens. Now on certain browsers, you're going to see a little notification that says something along the lines of, hey, you've already submitted the form. Are you sure you want to submit the form again? And that's what a post does, is it tries to basically hide that data from the URL so you can still copy that link and send it to other friends, family, other people on the internet, but it's not going to show up in your URL bar. So it's going to be a little more safe. Now it's not super safe. There are ways to make it more safe, but this is basically a crash course on APIs. So we have two methods here, get and post, and let's make a note here. Get method is 100% insecure. And the post method does not show variables in the URL bar. Let's go ahead and throw that into an HTML comment. Now let's talk about action. Action is, where is this form supposed to submit to? So let's change this back to get. And the action right now is blank. So that means this form is going to submit onto itself. We could also say, go to forms.html, and it's going to do the exact same thing it currently is. So Caleb Tallinn, submit, and it goes to forms.html. But watch this. Let's change it to a file that doesn't exist. Missing file.html. Save, and I'm just going to go back. So I'm back on forms.html. When I hit submit, it's going to go to a different page. It's not going to go to forms.html. Watch this. It goes to missing file.html, but it still sent all the variables. It sent my first name, it sent my last name. It's just trying to send it to a file that doesn't currently exist. Now you could make that file exist by simply creating a file called missing file, or you could send it to somewhere that actually does exist. What is a good one here? We have, let's go to div.html. Watch this. Div.html. I'm going to go back, refresh my page. So I've got Caleb as my first name, Tallene as my last name, submit, and it goes to div.html. Now this is going to show the entire div.html file that we worked on, but it's also going to have the variable of first name and last name in my URL bar. And likewise, if I wanted to hide that, I could just use post method. So let's refresh and watch this. It is silently behind the scenes sending that variable data. Now this is a crash course on how forms work. Again, we're not actually going to get into this until we start working with a server-side language. And in most cases, that's going to be fairly down the road for you. So right now we're learning something that is somewhat theoretical, but it is actually used on every single website that has any sort of data on it. Anything that it has to save, any sort of knowledge, for example, users or passwords or anything like that, it has forms on it. And in fact, let's go to a website. Let's go to IMDb and view page source. And I have never logged into IMDb, so I don't actually know if there is a form, but I'm willing to bet that there is. FORM, oh, look, there's one. There's a search bar. Totally forgot about that. So that's a form. And that one is a get method. The action is it's going to go to /find. So it's not going to go to find.html. They have a custom URL in there called /find. And inside of this form, we have an input type of hidden, input type of text, autocomplete is off. So we're going to learn about this stuff a little bit later, placeholder. But where's the name? Name is equal to Q. So now we can actually sort of reverse this a little bit. We know the name is Q, that's the variable. We know it's text, and we know the method is get. So let's go in here, and we know that that action was /find. When you submit the form, it's going to add $Q is equal to. And let's do, what is a good movie here? Avengers. Hey, would you look at that? My search actually worked. Titles, Avengers, They Stand. It finds all sorts of stuff. So basically, we hacked through their search field by simply reading their source code. Okay, so let's go back into our code and let's talk about your task. Your task for this lesson is going to be, making some room. Your task is going to be 1, create a new .html file. 2, I want you to create a form. Use the get method and set the action to, it doesn't matter, as long as it's another file. So if you have div.html, set it to div.html. So create a new form. 3, create an input field. Again, you don't need to know what this is. We're going to dive into this in the next lesson, but create an input field, type is equal to text, name is equal to, I don't know, first name or something. Then create another one, type is equal to submit, the value is equal to submit, and then submit your form. So create input fields. 4, submit your form. I guess you're going to have to save the file, open it up in your browser, then submit your form. And 5, make sure you can see the get variables in your URL. So you should be able to see first name is equal to Caleb in your URL bar. So go ahead, give that a shot. This is really important. Please don't skip over this one because you're going to need this one in the future. You absolutely will. This is not optional. This is mandatory. Now, if you get stuck or you need any sort of support, I'm here for you. You can always join the Learning to Code Facebook group. Tens of thousands of developers in there. We can all help you out as well at a moment's notice. Once you are done that, let's head on over to the next video where we actually learn about inputs and text areas and how we can actually customize our form to make it look sort of nice.